Okay, hi everyone. What I'm going to be doing today is just kind of going through a very short video here, and this video is going to be all about LDAP, just setting up LDAP on Ubuntu. And so, what I'm going to be looking at today is going to be a little bit kind of really simple. So, what we're going to have here is we're going to have an LDAP server here, and this is going to be let's say the LDAP server. Sorry about the writing. And then we're going to have a Postgres server here. So this server is going to be Postgres, and this Postgres can be running any version. It can be running 10, can be running Postgres 9, can be running any version of Postgres can be running here. And then I'm gonna have a client here, which is gonna be like let's just say a client server where nothing is running there. So basically here somebody let's say a user here, just tries to have access through this Ubuntu server to connect to Postgres. So he actually wants to connect to Postgres over here. But the deal here is that the credentials need to be verified from LDAP before the connection can be made to Postgres server. So again, if you don't want to have the client here, you can still use, if you configure the LDAP client, you can still have it on the Postgres server as well. So this is just going to be a simple illustration I'm going to give here right quick. And I'm going to start the configuration of the LDAP server. Then I'm going to check out my Postgres, look at Postgres, then I'm going to configure the client. So let's jump right in. So what I have here, this is going to be my client, my LDAP server itself. And then here is going to be where my Postgres will be running. And over here will be the client. So right quick, what I'm going to do here is let me look first things, look at the host file, and I'm going to modify this host file. So let me just look for the IP address of this server right quick. So ifconfig. So the IP here is 121, and then I'm just going to modify that over here. So I'm going to modify that, and then I'm going to be using, I'm just going to give it a name, LDAP server. Let me just call it LDAP server Ubuntu. Right, LDAP server Ubuntu. Yeah, that's our Ubuntu.hub2. The reason I'm doing that is because uh, I don't just want it to conflict with anyone. .hub2.org, and then you might have your own different. So I'm just going to include that as well on the other servers too. And let me jump to the Postgres server, and then let me log in on the Postgres server here. Okay, and this is the IP address of the Postgres server 103. So I'm going to add that over on the Ubuntu server as well. This is 103. And I'm going to call this LDAP Postgres. Let me just call it LDAP Postgres.hub2. And again, depending on your environment, you might have different domains that you want to use. So you can go ahead and use that as well. So let me log in on my client server as well, and just pull that information there quick. Uh, and again, if you're running on the virtual machines like me, you might want to make sure that you have sufficient memory and all of that. Sometimes it can really get slow. Okay, this one is running 187. I'm going to grab that and I'm going to put it over here as well. And I'm just going to call this my LDAP client. So I'm going to call LDAP client.hub2.org. LDAP Ubuntu. I don't just want it to clash with anyone. Ubuntu client. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is just quickly copy all of this so that I can just put on the other servers as well. And again, this is something you might already have done. So just, oops, sorry, kind of using nano there. Oh, okay. Look, I have some already here, which I did configure, but let me just wipe this out. And I'm going to paste what I brought over there. It's good. And then on my client as well, I'm going to do nano etc host, and I'm going to paste the same thing as well over here. So I'm good to go. And can save this file. Say yes. I'm going to save the one over there on the client, and I'm going to save this one as well. So now at least this is okay. So I can ping any other server directly from here, which should be able to work. And then, if I pick up the Postgres server here and I ping that server, I should be able to get a response, which is fine. And then the same thing if I ping the Ubuntu client. Sorry, if I ping the Ubuntu, oops, typo there. So I should be able to get a response as well. So we should be able to ping them from all of those servers. So that's fine. So now we're going to start the installation here on the Ubuntu server. So first things first, the first thing you might want to do is to update the machine itself. This is just a brand new machine. I've not done anything, so this is just basically a live configuration here. And the next thing is you're going to install LDAP utilities and everything needed to configure LDAP. So I'm going to run this yum install until, so it's going to install all what is needed for LDAP. And then during the installation, it's going to prompt you for a couple of things, right? It's going to prompt you for the password. So you might have an admin password which you want to be able to log into LDAP. So you can provide that here, and then the configuration continues. Okay, it shouldn't take much time. It should be done in a couple of minutes here. So after this is done, we're going to run some post-installation configurations. The thing here is that when the installation process, when it goes through, you might need to run a command which will help us configure LDAP. So I'm going to use this command, reconfigure. So we want to reconfigure that, and it's going to ask us for a couple of information. So first things here is going to say, okay, do you want to omit LDAP server configuration? You don't want to do that, right? That's what you want to say. So no, you press enter, and then it's going to ask you for the domain, right? So what actually is your domain? Whatever domain you want to use. So it could give you an example, some examples here, as you could see over here, or the DMS domain name, and you could go ahead go ahead and do that. All right. So basically, so when it asks us for our domain, uh, in this case, we're just going to enter the domain that we already have, which is hub2.org. So we're going to use this as our domain here. So we're going to press enter. There's going to ask you for your organization name, right? Whatever your organization name is, you might want to put there. I'm going to put here Benson, um, Benson Consulting. Right, just gonna put something like that there, and then I'm gonna put enter. I'm gonna specify my password, put enter, then I'm gonna confirm the password. And then, do you want the database to be removed from LDAP when it actually purge? You're gonna say no. All right, you don't want that database removed. All right, so move all database. All right, yes, you just allow this to be default of yes. All right. So it's a yes, enter. Then it will go ahead based on the information that you provided. It will go ahead and create everything that's necessary for LDAP there to work. Um, Again, the next thing we're going to look at here is the ldap.com file. So let's look at that file. Let's look at what is inside. It's actually an ECT ldap ldapconf. Right now, this file, there are a couple of things you have to add in this file here, and one of the main things, the two things here is your base domain controller and your actual um, LDAP server information. So here you're going to add you're going to say PC DC, and we're going to specify that is it's a hub2, and then we will do the comma, and then we will specify up to the arc, right? And then you're going to specify URI LDAP. So basically, there are a couple of ways you can do that here. Let me just, you specify URI. So you're going to specify the LDAP server information, right? Like the host name of the LDAP server. Here we already have that. So if I cut here /etc/host, which we just updated, I can grab the LDAP server host name. Yeah, can copy that, and then I can paste that over here, and I can put the default port of LDAP. So it's LDAP is running on 389. So you want to make sure that you have this there. If you don't want to put this, all of this, you can just put the actual IP address of the server directly here without that. All right. So that is that for this. Let me remove this so that we don't get confused here. So this, we can go ahead and save this file. So yes, we save that file. Um, okay. Um, One other main thing we want to do here is you might want to add groups into LDAP. So right now we have LDAP already configured here and working fine. And if we want to, we might decide to add groups, right? So what I want us to do here is add some groups in LDAP. So again, uh, if you're still new into LDAP, it's kind of good to really look into, because LDAP is more of just like, saying you're having a centralized location where you have all your users are created there, and then for those users to be able to access any resource, they must be able to have access to the LDAP server. All right. So what we're going to do here is just basically adding, um, we're going to add a group, right? We might add a group to the LDAP server, and we might decide also to add a user to that LDAP server. All right. So that's what we're going to do here now. Okay. Okay, so we're just going to do that, and we're going to add a user here. And again, okay, to do that, let's just, let me just create a sample file here. Nano, let's start by trying to see how we can add an object. And again, you can do it on the command line, as well as you can create a LD file and use that with it, right? So let's say we want to add something. Let's just start with an example here. Let's say example.ldif. So the files must be LDIF, because that's the format um, for LDAP here, if you want to use that. But again, you can still use the command line. So let's say we want to add this object. So you can specify all of that, so the domain controller, the object class, everything, the TC and all of that. And then let's save this, say yes. And then in order to do that, we use a command called ldap add. And then we're going to do like ldap add, and then we're going to specify the file, which is an example file, and then we're going to say -x -d, which is a domain. We specify uh, which is, and again, most of these information that you specify here are based off of what you gave when you did that configuration. And you can, if you get mixed up, you can actually open the LDAP file, which will show you this. So I'm just going to specify X, and then I know my password. I just kind of gave a simple password. All right. And Postgres here is a password I gave. So if you see this, shows that it already exists. Now, what we're adding already exists because we already provided that, right? When I was doing that configuration, I already provided that information. Okay. And how can you see that? You can actually run the LDAP search, um, LDAP search command, which will give you, which will show you that that has been added in. So search what, let me pick up this and run this. So when I run this command here, it shows me exactly what I have in the LDAP database. So you could see here that the information I'm specifying, you remember all of this which I specified when I was providing that, so you have it already inside LDAP. Okay, so again, let's try to add an organizational unit, and then again, these are all just terminologies with LDAP, right? You hear something like organizational units, just a way of, because LDAP is all about having a centralized location where you create users, and then you manage them from there. So you can create multiple organizational units to just make sure that you partition things accurately. So we're going to create an organizational unit called users, and I'm just going to create a file for that. And I'm just going to call it, it's just going to be short, right? Users there, and then I specify my domain controller, and that's it. So let me save this file here. And then how do we apply that? We just run the same LDAP add that we did before, the same command, and then we specify users. All right, there we go. Now you must be able to see this, that adding to LDAP. If you adding a new entry, if you don't see that, then there's a problem with your configuration. All right, and then just try to see exactly, figure out what happened, and maybe looking at the actual issue that you have. That will really help. Okay, now what I want us to do here is create a user. All right. And I'm going to just go ahead and create a user here. And what we're going to do is um, we're going to add a user to LDAP, right? And you can add a user from the LDAP server, as well as you can add a user from anywhere. All right. Let's just go ahead and I show you how we can add a user here. It's pretty easy. And first, you can, let's take for example that we have a user here. We have a user on the server. Let me just call it EDB user, right? Let me just call that, I'm using a EDB Postgres, so I've just call it EDB user. So I've added this user. And now one main thing that you might want to do, you should do is use LDAP to generate that user's password. All right. So you can um, run something like uh, LDAP, slap password, pass WD, for EDB user, and then oh, it's giving us something here. Uh, slap pass WD. Okay, let me see. Let me see if I log in as EDB user. Oh, it's giving me that, but that's fine. Let me see. Slap pass WD. So I just want to generate the user password for that user. So I'm going to put my password here. I'm going to repeat the same password here. And then let me exit out of here back to root. This is what you need to keep. You need to make sure you keep this hash here. All right. And then what I'm gonna go ahead to do now is I'm gonna create EDB user, and I might want to look at the ID for that EDB user. EDB user here. So it's 1001. So I might go ahead and put nano EDB user dot ldif, and yeah. So that there is a bunch of text which I did create already, which you might want to use that as well. So I just provided the same user, EDB user, and all of that. And I'm going to show you how we can add this another user again from, from a different, from our host when we get everything configured. So let me just log out here. And then I will need to copy. Remember, I said you need to keep this hash, very important. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to open up back that file. I'm going to come over here and change that. Oops. So I'm going to change that. Okay. So I'm going to save my file here. Okay. Now with the file change, so what next? We can go ahead and add that user to LDAP. Right. So we're going to do db user. So you see adding new user, right? So if we do LDAP search, the command we ran earlier on, we should be able to see that we have that user, EDB user. You see here, we have EDB user. Okay, and these commands you can all run them, remotely. All of that still work. Okay, and then there's also a concept of groups. You can also add groups as well. All right, so if I create another file here and I call it groups, this is going to be for my groups, ldif. So nano groups. So, and then you can create a group, you can add just to groups or however you want to do it. So here I'm putting EDB user and then specifying that top and then the user ID number. So I'm going to save this file. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add that, which is groups. Just added my new entry. All right, that's that. Okay, so again, when you do this, it's just good to make sure that everything it's fine. Make sure that all the commands run successfully, and you could run LDAP search. Let's run LDAP search here to see exactly everything that is on this server here. Okay, I'm just gonna modify this a little bit. So here I'm gonna specify -d, gonna specify cm admin. Okay, and okay, and over here I'm gonna specify the -b, and I'm gonna specify my domain controller. Okay, so good. So now the information here is kind of a little bit lengthy. I see all the users that are there, and if you add more users, definitely you will see them. All the information you have, your organizational unit. Just seeing all the setup that you have for LDAP. Basically simple, right? Okay. So now that we kind of have LDAP here working in this side here, the next thing which uh, I want us to do is let's just hop over to our Postgres server and make sure that Postgres is working. It's up. So let me log into Postgres server here for a minute, and let me I have a user called Enterprise DB. So, okay. So I have Postgres 13 actually running here. Right. So if I do show data directory, I should be able to see my data directory, and you see that it's running on port 5432. Okay. 544. All right. That's fine. And there are a couple of things we have to change here. Since I have Postgres working here, there's just a couple of things. There's not really much to be changed from the Postgres side, but yeah, there's something we have to change from Postgres side here. So what we need to mainly change from Postgres side is the configuration file. Right. PG data. So this is my data directory I have here. So I'm gonna open the PG HBA conf file, and I'm gonna do some modifications there. All right. Just to show you that everything will work fine, I'm gonna comment out these lines. All right. And this is the main file which controls everything there. Okay. So we're gonna put some information here. So first things first here, I'm going to specify 0.0. So I'm just going to tell it that it should accept connections from everywhere. But the difference is it's going to be using LDAP. And I have to specify the LDAP server, where the LDAP server is. And specifying the LDAP server, I need, let me just go ahead and use the actual name of that LDAP, the actual name which I did mapped out. So I'm just going to use that name, the same server name here. Then I'm going to specify my LDAP port, which is definitely the default port for LDAP here, which is 389. Right. Then I'm going to specify prefix. And again, there's a lot of things here on LDAP which you might want to go and look at LDAP, look at LDAP configuration, read more on LDAP. That will really help to really understand exactly, um, how all of this works. So because it's I'm just showing more of like the main configuration and how you can go about to set up LDAP here. I did had another video already which I provided doing that on the CentOS, um, but I just decided to do this on Ubuntu. Right. So I'm going to specify my organizational unit here, which I created, the LDAP server, which is users. And I'm going to specify my domain controller here, which is auto. And you must be very careful when you're inputting this, because if you make a mistake, uh, it won't work. Okay. So this is just the basic configurations setup which I have here, and then that's it. I'm just going to go ahead and save this file. So yes. Okay, now that this file has been saved, it's preferable to restart. Let's just do a reload of Postgres in a way, since it don't really require that to do a reload of Postgres. Okay, now that we've done a reload of Postgres, what next? What I want us to do next is let's install LDAP client um, binaries, right? So I'm just going to hop up to my client here, and these client binaries, you can still have them on the actual Postgres server, right? You can have them on the Postgres server. And again, if you want to have them on all the servers that you're using, that is still fine. So I'm going to run this command, which will install the client, and will also install SSCD. Sometimes that when you're configuring LDAP and you actually want that when you log in as a user, you should be able to create that home directory for that user on that server. Might, but again, it's not you might if you just have a client server you don't want to connect, you don't necessarily need NSCD. You can just use your LDAP auth client configuration. So we're going to go ahead to install this. Now, during the installation of this, again, it's going to prompt you for information on your LDAP server. Note that this is a client that would need to connect to LDAP. All right. So now let's go ahead and provide that information. So we're gonna copy this. And again, this part that I'm doing here, you can also do it as well on your server, on your Postgres server. All right. I'm just gonna specify up to. Then I'm gonna specify, sorry, okay, okay, enter. Uh, Used is always good, yeah, and it kind of just gives you everything here. It's usually a good idea to set to the highest that version. So we're just gonna leave that there. Press enter. Make local, just gonna leave it at yes. And then does the LDAP server require login? Under normal circumstance, it's still good. Yeah, you can just leave it like that, or you can say yes. It doesn't really it doesn't really matter, but you can just leave it at that default. And then I'm just gonna leave my CM there to be manager, and I'm gonna specify hop to here, and over here I'm gonna specify org. Say enter. Then you're going to specify your LDAP root account password. It's always good you don't forget that password. So when you specify everything good, it's going to go ahead and create that, and it will set up everything required to connect to LDAP. But again, there's a couple of settings which I want us to look into when this is done here. Okay, this is done. Uh, let's look at a LDAP file, which is etc LDAP, because it does set that as well. Let's look at the file, and then you see here that it doesn't contain the information we added earlier on the other file. So we're going to grab that from the LDAP server. Pull this down here. So I'm just going to cut that file /etc/LDAP, then ldapcom, and I'm just going to copy these two lines here, and I'm going to add it on my client so that my client knows exactly where to go to connect, right? The client knows where to go to. And again, if you want to use TLS, that's another thing. You might want to use that, but for this demo, I'm just going to do default. Okay, so I'm going to create this. So again, now I have that installed there. All right, that should be good for the default. There are other ways in which you can edit some other files, whereby if you create a user, it might create additional directories, but I don't really see that to be really necessary here. We're not really going to dive into, going to create that. Let's just make sure that our connection here works very well. So now at this point, already have that. So when you have, this is my client server here, and from this server I can be able to add users to my LDAP, as long as this server has access to LDAP, right? So what I'm saying is, as long as I have this server, this is the server now here, as long as I've edited the ldapcom file here, which now is able to point to my LDAP main server. Very important. So right here, let me just try to see if I run LDAP search on this server, it should be able to pull that information for me. So if I run LDAP search here, if I run this command on the client server to see if I can be able to access LDAP from there. So I see here that, okay, it refuses. And again, this is another client libraries you might want to make sure you install on your, you just copy that on your client machine. I'm just going to go ahead to run that. Say yes. That should finish in a while. Okay. So when this finishes, then we know that we're able to configure our client to be able to access credentials from LDAP, right? So our client is able to access credentials from LDAP. So when that is set up, now we're going to see, now that we've also set up the Postgres configuration file here to accept connection only from here. So what is happening is that this Postgres server here, before it authenticates this user, it has to look it up on LDAP server, right? So it's like you're the user here, and then you want to have access to Postgres over here. But the thing is, before you have access here, you need to be able to authenticate to LDAP, right? And before the Postgres server allows you to connect, it has to make sure that you're a user here. So this is just like a centralized location here. Okay, we get that already set up. So let's run that command again. So now you see we're having a response, right? Which is the same thing. So if this command refuse to run, then we cannot access our LDAP server, right? So at this point, we know that the connection from the client to the LDAP server is working very well, right? And then now, since we have Postgres running, what do we do next? The next thing is we need to make sure that we try to connect over there. And then again, there's something again, you need PSQL, right? If I do hyphen help here, okay, I don't have PSQL client. Let me install PostgreSQL client. Let me just pick this command and run it. Install PSQL client right quick. So this is just a client library. I'm not installing Postgres here, right? I'm not installing Postgres on this server. I don't need it. I don't need Postgres on this particular server. All I need is a PSQL client so that I can connect to Postgres, which is running on another server, right? Because if I look here, you will see here that we don't have any server running, right? There's no Postgres server running here. But let me see where those client libraries are. Uh, I think they should be in Postgres. Let me see here. Um, um, Let me see the two bin and see if they are here. I don't know. I don't think so. PSP we could also search that if I do PSQL. Yeah, so it looks like we have the PSQL client over here. So it's somewhere here. So we have it there. That's fine. All right. So now that we have it, if we try to run the same command we run earlier, PSQL hyphen this, error, you must install at least one PostgreSQL client package, blah, 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 blah. It's giving all that crap. Okay, now the easiest thing to do is just go online and then you go to the installation of Postgres. And the easiest way is, let me just show you here. The easiest way to go through it is just go to YouTube and sorry, on Postgres. So Postgres download, right? You see the website here, Postgres download. Here you click on Linux, and then we're using Ubuntu. You can click on that, and then you can just copy all of this, right? The easiest way, just copy this script, even though it's going to install Postgres, just copy all of this. So it has copied all of this script, right? Then you can just go and dump it over here. That's fine. You just install whatever required packages you want. That's just a basic way anyway. We'll not be running any Postgres here, and even you have Postgres here, you want to shut it down, that's fine. So all we need is just the PSQL client package to use to install. If the other method doesn't work for you, um, no, that's fine. This one here might install and then start Postgres, which is, well, not really recommended. But again, all we're looking for is PSQL to run, right? So even though it installed 13, yeah, it's going to install the binaries for 13. That is what we're looking for because we're connecting to Postgres 13. So you might want to make sure that you're using the actual binaries for the server that you want to connect to, right? It so that you know you don't want to use binaries for 11 to connect to 13. You know, yeah, you definitely sometimes you might see some errors on the connection, but even though it works, but not really recommended to do that. Okay, um, that should be done very soon, and then we will try to test our connection to see if everything is working as we want. Okay, that's good. So if I run, definitely I would be able to see dummy Postgres running here. I call it dummy because I don't really need it anyway. So I will just copy this location where I have my binaries. That's what I want. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to export that to the path so that I don't have to go through the process of doing that. So right now, if we run this PSQL help, good. You should be able to see some information here. So that's good. So which means that anyway, we have our PSQL client installed. So next thing here is we want to connect to our server. Let's test the connection onto our server here, right? And what is our server name or the Postgres, where Postgres is running? Let's just quickly get that. So if I cut my etc host file, so this is where Postgres is actually running. This is where my LDAP server is. My LDAP server is here. My Postgres is running here, and the client, this is where I am. I'm actually on this client. So I want to connect to Postgres. But the thing is, it's going to search for my credentials on LDAP, right? So I want to connect to Postgres. So let me grab this Postgres. And then I know the port which is running on, as we saw earlier, is running on 544. And then I want to specify the database. I'm just going to connect to the EDB database as which user. I'm going to specify EDB user. Now, if I hit enter here, it gives me an error, which is kind of weird because it's telling me connection refused here. So something might be wrong here. It should be able to hit these, but I don't expect to see this. So basically, that server is not accepting connection. Connection has been refused to this server. This is what we're receiving here. So let's jump over to LDAP server and see what is going on. Why is connection refused? Even though I don't expect that connection to work, but it shouldn't tell me connection refused. What I'm suspecting here is, let me connect to Postgres here. I hope you guys can see. Let me clear the screen here. What I'm suspecting here is that my listing address is set to local. Let me check just to confirm listing addresses. Okay, you see, and when this is set to localhost, it won't accept external connections. So mine, if it won't accept external connections, so you need to make sure that either this is accepting all connections, or you might want to specify the host where you want it to accept connections. So to do that, we're just quickly going to open up that file, which is PostgreSQL conf file, and we're going to search for listing address. It should be somewhere here. Okay, here it is. So I'm just going to, and again, you see here, it says that you can set it to star, which means for all, right? So for now, I'm just going to set it to star here. So I'm just going to remove this and I'm going to set this to star, right? I'm going to save my file. And then when this actually requires a restart, so restart is required. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to restart this server. Systemctl restart EDB. So I'm actually running 13. It's 13, so it's been restarted. Just want to make sure that it's back up and running, which is great. Okay, let's log back in as Enterprise DB again. Let me clear my screen here. So again, if I log in and I do listing addresses, I should see star, which is what I want. Okay. So let's go back over to our client and try that connection again. It shouldn't give us connection refuse this time around, but we don't expect it to connect anyway. Okay, now you see that it's requesting for the password now. This password is requesting for is trying to hit the LDAP server. All right. So if I put the password for that user here, uh, now this and this sex error here, it says role does not exist. Now, even though it's trying to access the Postgres server, this you need to make sure that you have this user inside the Postgres server, right? Which we did not create. So we have added this user in the LDAP server, but we don't have this user in Postgres. So let's quickly rush over to Postgres here and let's connect and create that user. So I'm just going to say, I'm just going to create role EDB user, right? With logging, and then I'm going to specify. And again, it's not a must, right? Not recommended. If you don't want to use super user, that's fine. Super user again, that means he has access. It's just like an admin user in the database there. So I'm going to specify the password, and my password here is just basic password, which is Postgres. And again, the password which you provide here should be a password which you're using on your LDAP server. All right, you provide your LDAP server. Even though I've created this user in Postgres now, which definitely means that this user can log in, right? But look at what is going to happen here now. Let's go back to our client and try to connect again. I'm going to expect a different error. I don't expect it to actually connect. So let me connect. Oh, we're having a connection here. It's actually connected. Okay. Yeah. Actually, it's good. It should connect, right? It should connect. Why? Why should it connect? It should connect because we have this user. The reason why we're having this connection now is because we have this user in LDAP and we have the user in Postgres. And when we sit here, this user is trying to establish connection over here. And then, it sees the user here and the password, and from the Postgres server is confirmed. So we see that our LDAP is working fine. Now, let me show you again what we let me go to the Postgres server now and create another user, right? In this case now, let me create another user, and I'm going to call that user Benson. All right, and then let me create a user. Now I've created the user Benson, and the user has the same password. Now let's go back to the client server now and try to connect. So now let me put the user Benson here. Now, under normal circumstances, we're expecting that this should go through because we have the user in Postgres, but this should fail. Let me put this and you see the failure. Now you see the failure error now. The error here is because that LDAP authentication failed for that user. And the reason for this is just because Benson does not exist in LDAP. Now, what I'm saying here is now we've created the user in Postgres over here, but we cannot just connect over there like that. We need to make sure that the LDAP, you know, um, LDAP should have that user Benson. So you need to make sure you add that user Benson in LDAP. If you don't add it, it won't connect even though the user is here. So that's the main reason with, that's one of the main things with LDAP is all users need to exist in the LDAP server before they can have access to whatever service that you have. So right now, even though we have created a user here, we cannot just connect here. And the reason why we cannot just connect there is because, it looks up. Postgres will try to look it up over in LDAP. And the reason for that is because on our Postgres server, let's hop over to our Postgres server here. The reason for that is because on our Postgres server here, if you look at our PGHBA file, right? PG data. If you look at our PG, HBA conf file here, we did specify that no connection, even though it's accepting connections from everywhere, but those connections, it must look them up from LDAP server. This is explicit. There's no way around it, right? So the users must belong to LDAP. So what do we do next since this connection did failed here? So now that it failed, we might ask the LDAP administrator, hey, please, can you add Benson in LDAP? All right. It's basically gonna easy. So we can do that. Let's just go over to the LDAP server and add that. And again, you can add that user even from other servers as well, right? You must not add them only from the LDAP, from the LDAP, only from LDAP itself. So basic now. Well, what else? The basic thing what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to edit the same file here, right? If I do ID Benson here, I think I have Benson here already on this server here. So I have Benson over here on this particular server here. So, but again, since I already have this file to add a user, I'm just going to edit all the information inside this file to change everywhere to Benson. So I'm just going to use the EDB user. I don't want to edit the file and change everything by hand. So I just want to. So now that everything has been changed here, if I cut this file now, right, you should see that everything there now is Benson, right? Yeah, so you could see here that everything has been changed to Benson. I will just leave this the same hash here because I was using one password, right? But if you're not using the same password, make sure you change that before you put that in. And then basically here, this should be, you should be, I should just make sure that I'm having a different, let me just make a copy of that, right? So nano Benson. So I'm just going to change this ID number here. Come on, 0 and 0. I'm going to save that, say yes. So now I'm going to add that user using LDAP add. So I'm going to add that user in our LDAP database. All right, so I'm going to add Benson. So you see here that adding the user now. I've added Benson now in the LDAP database now. So if I do a search, if I run a search here, I should be able to see that, I have Benson now added in the LDAP database. So Benson is now in LDAP database. So what I've just done here now is added Benson over here in LDAP. So let's test our connection now from our client server. All right. So let's go over to the client now, and then let's try to connect Benson. Let's put the password. Boom. So it works. So that's just a concept of LDAP, all right. And then this is how you can set LDAP with Ubuntu, to have that connection into Postgres, right? That works pretty, pretty easy and everywhere. Very, very good. And again, if you have multiple servers, right, and you have multiple servers running different versions of Postgres, you can, it's the same, all you need to do is, on those servers that are running Postgres, on the other servers that you have, you need to just make sure that all of them are looking up, the users before requesting connection, accepting connection. They're looking them up from the LDAP server, right? On those different Postgres versions. Then LDAP will not handle it. Then all you do now is, have everything. So that what I mean is if you have multiple other servers, let's say this one is running Postgres 10, this one is running 13, let's say this one is running 10, this one is running 9, this one is running Postgres 11. You need to make sure that the PGHBA here, all the PGHBA here is pointing here, the PGHBA is pointing here, this one's all the PGHBA pointing to the LDAP server, right? Then you make sure you create the users in the LDAP. And now when you use a client server to connect, the connection will be established, just basic as that, right? And I hope that was really that was clear. If you have any question, please let me know. And that will be the end of this demo. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.